It's a novelty.
The better example is that coffee that animals eat then poop out, and then people drink it. Welcome to the Gathering Greenhouse, a podcast to help us grow together. I'm Steve, and this is David, and we have a chock full, packed day of interesting things to talk about.
Fantastic.
Okay, so let's just jump right into it if you want to. Or did you have anything you wanted to say before?
Well, what else would we do?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes you like to draw us off topic if you had something to say or...
Well, aren't we supposed to have candy or something?
Well, no. What I wanted to do first here is I was really interested. So last week we talked about...
Is this getting bigger?
It is getting larger.
Is it growing? Oops, sorry, Spidey.
Last week we talked about time management, right? Like
We did?
work, right? Remind me, because I have a question here.
Like
Rest.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Like last week when
Well,
you
we
say
talked about it in your sermon.
okay, that was just a couple days ago. Last week was like a week ago today, which would be on the podcast.
Okay, yeah.
So like on Sunday.
Last Sunday. Give us a recap.
Last Sunday or just 2 days ago Sunday?
Like a week ago last Sunday.
So like 9 days ago.
Yes, that one.
You want me to remember like what happened 9 days ago?
Yes. What was just the main gist of the sermon?
Take a break from
Take a
busyness.
break. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Okay.
I was questioning myself for a second. Yeah. So along with take a break, we were talking about like, how do you know if you're working too much, if you're working too little? Remember that? You just remember?
Vaguely.
Okay. So that's what we talked a little bit about in the podcast. Yeah. And we didn't have enough time to get to a question. I wrote it down. So I was excited to get back to it and talk about it because it's something that
We're going to go back to it right now.
we're going to go back to it right now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to, because we were both excited to talk about it, like write that down. Let's
I was?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
This is where if we were cool enough, we could put up the clip of David saying, Steve, write that down. We're going to go back to it. But
No, I
we're not
remember
cool.
that. Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, are you stealing time if you're scrolling on Twitter while you're working? Do you remember why you were excited?
Like at work.
Yeah.
So you're at work.
You're at work.
Okay.
So I could say also like,
Are you stealing money?
yeah. So we could also talk about like, so one of the like least productive weeks of the year is the week that March Madness starts. You know, because everyone is either watching it on their phone or looking at live updates.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? So, are you stealing?
Who won March Madness this year?
I think UConn.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
No one I thought who was going to win.
No, it was a terrible tournament.
It was not good. But I only really watched the first couple weeks anyway. Then I lose interest if I don't have a team in it.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that, David?
So I think part of it depends on what your job is, right?
Yeah.
And what the
If you work at Twitter, it might not be.
Nobody works at Twitter
It's all
anymore.
bots.
So like
Artificial intelligence.
yeah, like you know what are you getting paid for?
Yeah.
And you know what are the expectations? But if you're being paid hourly
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing something that's not part of your job
Yeah.
during an hour that you're getting paid for.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is,
Okay.
right? If it's scrolling Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, if it's, you know, whatever, then yeah, that's stealing, isn't it?
Okay. So what I immediately go to is like the person at the like parking lot that just, you know, waits for someone to come in or leave.
Okay.
You know, if you're scrolling on Twitter right there, it may not be that big of a deal.
Sure.
But maybe you're supposed to be picking up trash if you have extra time, or, you know, there could be, you know, who knows, no idea what all is involved in being a parking lot attendant. But I'm thinking about like,
So
those
did you
people.
hear about this parking garage that collapsed?
I did.
Now, have you heard any conversations about why it collapsed?
I have not.
Okay.
No. I just saw it.
So it collapsed because
Yeah.
there were too many cars.
What?
Well,
Really?
I mean, well, that makes sense, right?
Because it's New York City and they try to jam too many cars in there?
Yeah, I mean, that and just, I mean, why else would it collapse?
Well, I just think of that like that that condo in Florida that collapsed because of like, damage from
Well, right.
weather
So there's got to
damage.
be something that
Okay.
that happens.
Inside
Inside
job.
job.
Osama bin
Yeah,
Laden.
maybe. So anyways, but
This is New York City.
So this is the interesting thing that now people are
Who
talking
is the next
about.
Osama bin Laden? Now he's gone, so we can't blame him anymore, unless Obama lied to us.
Wait, isn't there's other guys, right? Like, I mean,
Probably other.
like bad guys and stuff.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's a Osama bin Laden anymore. Someone who can.
But was there really? I
blame
mean,
it
was
on.
there really even an Osama bin Laden when there was an Osama bin Laden? Because I feel like Osama bin Laden had retired. Like he was just
He was living in
he was
Pakistan.
just chilling at his vacation home.
I don't know if that's a good retirement. Like he
Well, it's
basically
not like
couldn't
he-
leave his compound.
It's not like you could go to Miami.
No,
Right.
he's stuck in Pakistan. I'm sure it's fairly nice-ish there.
Anyhow, so the parking garage. So now there's this conversation as to maybe part of the problem, and not the whole problem, is that electric cars weigh more than gas
Oh.
cars. And so all of our parking structures were built
Yeah.
for gas cars. So when it says you can only have X number of cars, the weight distribution is different now. So now we're going to have to, our engineers are going to have to go back and refigure everything and say, okay, now you can only have this many cars. Needless to say, I think probably the issue was like in New York, because there's so little parking
Yeah.
space,
They
they're putting too many
So
cars in there.
someone's getting in trouble.
Well, so this
Someone
brings us
died.
full
There's
circle.
one person died.
I think the problem was
Was-
the guy,
oh.
the parking attendant was
Okay, I see
scrolling
where you're
Twitter
going with this.
instead of counting the cars.
He was looking, just
So blame it on him.
blame it on him.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're saying it's not just cut and dry where, if you're scrolling on Twitter, you're stealing from your job or you're a bad employee.
No, I don't
or
think
you're lazy.
Right. I don't think it's cut and dry. I think it depends on the expectations.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Yeah.
the parking attendant, maybe he is supposed to go out and sweep or
Right.
clean up trash. Or, I mean, if I was running a parking garage
Right.
and I was paying someone
Yes.
an hourly
Right.
wage,
You'd want-
I would have a big list on the window.
I know
right?
you would,
That
David.
said, if you're not doing anything, you need to be doing these
If
things.
John was awake today, he would agree that he check
John's doesn't call.
Well, so an interesting point to this. Okay, so maybe it's not stealing, right? We could say, it depends on your job, whatever.
Right.
Scrolling Twitter. I would argue it's not a good use of your time, pretty much no matter what. So I have an example to share with you, and you may have
Okay.
heard this story, but it's a really cool story, and it's someone who goes to the gathering.
All right. Welcome to the
Welcome to the podcast. Never mind, we'll get rid of that story completely.
All right. Okay.
So don't scroll on Twitter unless you have a reason to be on there.
Yeah. So actually, we will talk about that a little bit this
Yeah.
Sunday. We're I'll just give a little hint
Yeah.
as to where we're going. We're talking about the Sabbath still,
Mm-hmm.
and the Sabbath is rooted in what God did at creation, right?
Yeah.
So Genesis 2:1, I think it's 2:1, maybe 2:2, that in 6 days he created the earth and then he rested, and so the Sabbath is holy because on that day God rested. So the question is,
Yeah.
why did God rest? Did he rest because he was tired?
Mm-hmm. Did he? No, he did not.
No.
Because he's setting an example for us.
Well,
I was just, that was a,
Yeah.
I was like,
that-
I
yeah,
thought there
right,
was
yeah.
more coming.
Like, no, God was not tired.
No.
God doesn't get tired.
that was,
But God rested because he was done.
right.
He was finished. And that's, when you talk about he set an example, that's actually the example,
Yeah.
is that you're supposed to use those 6 days to finish your work. The whole point being, if you've not finished in 6 days what you need to get done in 6 days, it's really hard to rest on that seventh.
Right.
Because all you're thinking about is your unfinished
Right.
work.
Okay.
So that's why actually understanding how productivity works, how
Yes.
time management works, that's actually a beneficial practice for Christians. So when Facebook or Twitter or email or anything else robs you from getting your work finished in those 6 days, now it's keeping you from resting on the seventh.
Yeah.
And it becomes a really bad thing.
Very good point. Now, what if you have, so for us, right? We have meetings throughout the week and different responsibilities, Sunday through Thursday. But if we have, a retreat or, a big event coming up, we may work, definitely a whole week straight, but then going into the next week, because Monday's busy, you might work, like 12 days in a row. So what can you speak to that a little bit? Is there sometimes it's okay to do that? Or should we say, you know what, even though I have this really busy week coming up, I'm going to choose to take a day off and just rest?
Yeah. So we'll get to that in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we're going to talk in 2 weeks about what that rest actually looks like.
Yeah.
And the big idea is that this is a principle, right? It's something that is good for us. That it's a gift from God, but it may look different for different people. So the principle is work 6 days and rest the seventh.
Yeah.
But you can macro apply that and micro apply that. In fact, God does, right? Because he also gives the Israelites this principle of Sabbath years, where you work for 6 years and then you let the fields rest for a seventh.
Right.
Right.
And they also, something that would be cool is the year Jubilee too.
Well, that's
Were you going into that?
I was,
okay.
because then you expand it a little bit bigger, that every 7 Sabbath year, that's 49, then the next year becomes a year of Jubilee. And so this principle, we realize it's actually, it goes everywhere. So now you can also take it back the other way and say maybe it also applies to like a day.
Yeah.
Where I work for X amount of time and then I rest for X amount of time. And so the principle really becomes work for a predetermined amount of time.
Yeah.
Get your work done, get your work finished. And when your work is finished, do something different.
Okay.
And like we talked about on Sunday, that might be recharging. That might be being still and knowing that he is God. It might be a lot of other things too. But work for X amount of time, get your work finished, and then do something different. So so like for me, there isn't one day when I don't work.
Yeah. When you say don't work, like church work?
Yeah.
Or are we saying
like my job?
Okay.
So there may be sometimes on a Friday, but it's pretty rare that I'm not going to get a phone call or an email or something, or that there's something I need to finish up. And honestly, I mean, Saturday night, I'm going to take some time to get ready to preach. But even if I'm not, my Saturday schedule, like I get up early on Saturday so that I can go to sleep early on Saturday.
Yeah.
So that I can I mean, even though I may not be focused on work, the whole structure of my Saturday is about making sure that I'm at my best on Sunday.
Right.
And so, so you just have to figure out what it looks like for you to make that Sabbath work.
Okay. So it depends on the person, right? It depends on the job. It depends on, what rest looks like to you personally, because that can look different as well. So if we could boil this down to, how can we best utilize our Sabbath? What might you say? Just a great application.
To utilize your Sabbath.
Yeah.
I would say finish your work so you can focus on God's work.
Okay. I like that. That could be a
that?
good tagline.
All right.
Good job.
Thanks.
All right. So we got some questions here having to do with the sermon. And this is kind of interesting here, because the first question I have for you is very similar to what you just did there. So if you can summarize last Sunday, so that's 2 days ago, Sunday, if you could summarize that in one sentence.
One sentence.
Yeah, a one sentence sermon.
Can it be a run-on sentence?
Absolutely. I love run-on sentences.
Okay.
They're my favorite.
You need to say that again in a way that it is a run-on sentence.
Run-on sentences.
Like, I love run-on sentences, and they're my favorite, and I like them because they make me so happy, and I never want to stop having run-on sentences.
Because I want my sentence to keep going and going and going, and they're so much fun because they're run-on sentences.
Yeah. Like the whole book of Ephesians is one long run-on sentence. All right, so one sentence for Sunday. The best way to recharge is to plug your life into God's mission.
Okay. And how do you do that?
I only had one sentence.
Well, I want to get into the practical sense of it.
Yeah. So
I know you talked a lot. You went into a great deal about what that looked like for Jesus, what that can look like for us. If we could give some like application points, how can we plug into?
Yeah. So the nature of God
Yeah.
is that he loves and he delivers and he provides. And so we are God's children. And so we are to be imitators of him.
Yeah.
And we are to be imitators of Jesus. Jesus demonstrated that by being someone who had compassion, who met people's physical needs, who met people's spiritual needs. And so if we are going to, follow suit, be plugged into that, then we ought also to be people of compassion who are looking to meet physical and spiritual needs. And here's the run-on sentence. And we plug into, God's power and his agenda by focusing on him, which we won't talk about a ton this week, but we will talk about a lot in 2 weeks when we unpack this verse, be still and know that I am God, which is just, there's a lot of just depth and richness in what that means. So be still and know. You have a stop and start.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot there that's going to be fun to talk about.
Okay.
But that's how we plug into God's power. Is we stop trying to plug into everything else. We get rid of all the distractions and we prioritize him.
Yeah. So, that sounds like something you can't just do. It sounds like you have to practice that and make it part of your life. It's not something where one day you're like, okay, I'm just going to stop plugging into these things, because you may not even really realize all the things you're actually plugging into.
Yeah, right. You have to be intentional.
Yeah.
So much of what we talk about is you have to be intentional. And obviously this sermon is still in construction phase, but I do know that kind of the application points at the end are going to look something like you have to set aside time to do this.
Yeah.
Like you have to make a plan to actually do this. And then you have to slowly build it up over time. So start small and build over time.
Yeah.
Which means, maybe at the beginning you're saying, I'm going to set aside 5 minutes a day to just try to be still.
Right.
That is really hard. I mean, to be still for 5 minutes. Let's try it. Ready? Go.
I don't think I'm going to be still. That's 5 minutes is way too long for people to watch this. As you're sitting still, I'm going to make one comment. Just the place that we live in, right? We live in the U.S. We're consumer mindset.
Can we stop just for a second?
Yeah.
I want you to finish your thought because I think it's a good thought.
Yeah.
But I just want to note how awkward that was.
Okay.
For us to sit still for 5 seconds?
I wouldn't mind it if there wasn't a podcast rolling.
But no, that's kind of the point, is that this world that we live in is so opposed to stillness.
Yes. Awkward, like people will even be like, that was awkward,
And one of the reasons why we are so anxious and so hurried and so worried is because we don't know how to be still.
Yeah.
All right, back to what you're saying.
Yeah, so we live in a very consumer forward nation, right? We live in, it's all about acquiring stuff. Partly because that's how companies and things make business. And, advertisement is everywhere. We got Eddie Bauer right here. I have Tommy Hilfiger here. You
were just looking for an opportunity to point out that you're wearing Tommy Hilfiger.
Why?
Because to anybody who's from the 90s, that's like a status symbol.
It was?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Man, that guy.
You're distracting me from my point.
You're super cool. All right, go on.
But anyway.
Tommy's cooler than Eddie.
I like Eddie Bauer.
Well, I do too. I don't wear anything Tommy, but yeah.
I don't really have that much either.
But you're cooler than me.
Okay.
Except for you wearing a Carhartt hat, which kind of throws you into Kentucky.
Okay.
And then it's just,
Well, anyway.
What was your point?
That wasn't my point. My point is that, there's so much advertisement out there. It's on Twitter. It's on any social media. It's on the shows that you watch. I didn't even think of this, but I was watching this documentary on Netflix, and they went to North Korea, and you know, like it's very controlled environment when they let reporters go there. But they were at a subway station in North Korea. And, you know, like if you've ever been to New York City and you've been down in the subs, there's signs everywhere. There's advertising there. Well, the North Korean subway, there was none of that. You know,
So
it
you're
was
talking
just
about like the subway car, not the restaurant.
all right. Yes, not the restaurant.
I was
They
kinda
don't have
sand-
subway. They
like
don't have subway.
sandwiches on my
They
mind.
don't
I
have
was like,
subways in North Korea. I don't
Go
think.
for a BMT.
But
Right.
and another thing that was interesting is that none of them were like looking at their cell phones either, right? Because they don't.
There's nothing on
they
them.
don't have their, you know. But it just like whoa to see a country and to see a group of people that don't have those distractions. I realize they have a lot of other distractions, but they don't have the same distractions that we have. It's like whoa, like I didn't even kind of realize how invasive that stuff is until you see a picture of like what it could be like if we didn't have all those advertisements everywhere.
Right.
You know, that was one of those moments where it's like, wow, you know what? There's actually it's not just about like what I personally do. It's about all the noise around me that subconsciously I'm distracted by. So recharging might look like going into the woods, into a cabin and just getting away from all that. Like that might be one of the only ways now that you can actually truly disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that with one little tiny addition.
Yeah.
Because the verse says, be still and know that I am God. And I think that's really the important thing is disconnecting for a little while can be really helpful. And that's a good thing to do. But if it's only for the purpose of disconnecting, it's not going to recharge you.
Yeah.
There's got to be that I'm plugging in, I'm focusing on who God is, what God has done.
Great point.
And that's where the recharging actually happens.
And I think we could take that concept that you're saying right there and apply that to almost any of the Christian practices that we have, like going to church. Walking in a building doesn't make you closer to God.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Knowing you can know all about God, but not actually know him.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you can know all the facts, but not really live any of those out.
Can I say something a little maybe
controversial?
Maybe a little.
Okay. Yes.
So you've seen on the connection cards, right? We get connection cards. We both look at most of the connection cards. And this is just a funny thing is every week, not every week, but most weeks we get one or two connection cards that have no name on them.
Yes,
right?
We do.
And
we might have had a few more this week.
And whenever we get a connection card with no name on it,
right?
No contact, what's on the other side of it?
A comment?
Yeah. But is it a Is it a?
It's you guys need to do this.
It's always like a criticism.
It's a criticism
or a critique or something like that.
Yeah.
And here's my thought.
Right.
If you go into church and your focus is on what's wrong, are you worshiping God? Because you cannot worship God while you're angry.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot worship God while you're focused on problems.
Yeah.
So even if it's just for that moment, like, okay, I'm distracted by this and now I'm mad about it.
Yeah.
Now your focus is gone from God.
Mm-hmm.
The reverse of that is if I am fully focused on worshiping God and encouraging his people, I don't see all that bad stuff, right? I don't see all the problems. So anyways,
yes,
good point.
So a good way to look at that is to say, you know, if you see something, it's not about your preference. It's about the preference of maybe someone who's new or something that we could be better at, more efficient at. You know, like those are
sure
helpful.
But, I mean, sometimes people even have legit critiques.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah,
like this hasn't happened, but if someone was like, "Hey, I saw a nest of snakes up in the rafters," like that's a legit critique, and maybe you should deal with that.
Yeah.
But the point is, if that's all you're focused on, you're no longer focused on God.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Okay. Next question for
There's no snakes, no nest of snakes in the gathering. So
there is none.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no snakes
that you know of.
I think we actually have had a snake in the building at least once.
Well, I've noticed that the ceiling tiles are back in this room, so it might be because snakes kept falling down in this room, and now they just stay up there.
Good. Oh wait, actually, I didn't look good enough. There's holes right above us, so I guess we didn't get enough ceiling tiles when we ordered them.
Well, at least the snakes can come down there.
I don't see any snakes right now. Okay, what is your favorite way to recharge?
Oh, what is my
Can
favorite?
I guess?
Yeah, sure.
Favorite way to recharge? Making checklists.
No. That's work.
Watching baseball, watching soccer, playing soccer.
Yeah, I mean, playing soccer is probably in the ballpark. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say physical activity. Just, whatever kind, like whether that's.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't play.
Pickleball?
I don't play a lot of sports anymore because I'm, I don't want to hurt myself. So I do play a little bit of pickleball here and there. I do like to play golf.
Yeah.
I'd love to play soccer, but I'm afraid I probably would hurt myself.
That's one of those ones that you have a good chance of hurting something because it's hard to play like non-contact soccer.
Yeah, and it's
play FIFA.
It's hard for me. It's hard for me to play and not play
5.
hard. So, but yeah, I would say physical activity.
Yeah.
So yeah. What's yours?
So I love to do things. I love to. Probably my absolute favorite is traveling.
I was really hoping you were going to say woodworking.
I do enjoy that too.
I know.
I love fixing things.
I just think that would be cool if you're like woodworking
because
I like to create with my hands.
I'm not that good at woodworking. Like, can I do like small projects?
Did you do this?
I did not. John did this, but I could do that.
When you look at it, do you look at it and be like, if I had done it, it'd look better?
No, John did a pretty good job, but he did it real quick, and they're actually fairly level. But I think that I don't have any problem with what John did there. But yeah, I do look at some of the projects that other people do, and I do look at it with a critical eye.
I think John's back there is like, whew, Steve doesn't have a problem.
John doesn't care.
Steve knows that whenever I need help, I call him.
Exactly. Because, John and I did paint his shed together.
Like 15 minutes. It was amazing.
Oh, it was awesome, and it still looks great. But when I go over to John's house and help him with the project, I am there to help him, so I don't criticize what he wants to do. I might say, "Hey, John, what would you think if we did it this way?" Because John is my friend, and I don't want to hurt his feelings, But then the funny thing is, Becca came home and was like, "Steve, why did you let John do this?" I'm not going to say what we did, but we did something.
Why did you let John do that?
Well, because it was his project, and if he didn't care about it, then I didn't care about it. So would I have done it differently? Yeah, I probably would have, but that's okay. It's not my house, and if John is happy with it, then I'm happy with it because he's my friend.
All right.
My wife's not happy with it.
It looks fine now, what we did, and I would agree with her. We probably shouldn't have done it, but it all worked out in the end.
All right, good. What a relief.
Yeah.
What a relief.
Cliffhanger there.
Are we almost done?
Yes. One more question here for you. On Mother's Day.
We didn't have food at the beginning, and I'm getting really hungry.
Well, I'm trying not to do.
And they're like eating
black
off
licorice.
camera.
Here we go.
The black
I am not
licorice.
eating black
We'll
licorice.
have to eat a black licorice.
Okay, give me
Nope.
one. John,
Brought to you by
you can smell the
Brock's?
black licorice.
I don't know. Is that Brock's or
Brock's.
Brax?
It just says. By the way, nowhere on here that I see does it actually say black licorice.
So-
it just
so-
says black. That's it. So, is it like it's because
I don't think it is licorice. It's Jelly Bird eggs.
It doesn't say it's all artificial flavoring. So there is no. They legally could not put black licorice. They could just put black jelly bird.
So check
eggs.
this out.
It's
Look
not
at
even
this.
jelly beans. It's jelly bird eggs.
This word is like everything that's wrong with the English language. So
It's disgusting.
Like we have absolutely no idea how to pronounce this because that A could be pronounced a, or a, right? Breaks, Brocks, or Brax.
I'm sorry, I just fell asleep for a second. What were you saying?
But then this is where it gets great. That CH there are so many different ways to pronounce it. It can be It can be like charcuterie, right? So like this
And there's
could
a
be
star, but there's not an apostrophe.
this could be braces, but we know it's not braces.
David's just trying to talk about this so he doesn't have to try it. Jelly bird egg.
It could be
Don't try one. They're really gross.
Braces.
It's still stuck in my teeth.
Oh, so good.
so braces, braces, breaks,
Did you notice there was no black licorice on the label?
bratches,
Yeah,
You saw it was
Brotches.
just black.
that was a guess.
braches. This is
Who?
just
Who is it a gift
I have
from?
no idea. Where is this from?
Mother-in-law? That's who I was saying. I thought it solely seems like something she would do.
Are we
That's
completely
very
we're
nice of you.
just off the rails now?
We are. Okay. Question
I feel like
here.
we are no longer redeeming the
Speaking of
time.
mother-in-laws,
Ooh.
this ties into this. On Mother's Day, we're doing a child dedication.
Yes.
Why do we do that?
I wish we had covered this earlier when people were still
So
watching.
Well, we can take this clip and put it
All right.
in an important
Yes.
spot.
All right. So why do we do a child dedication?
Yeah. What's
So-
the point?
Yes. Good question. So we're different than a lot of other churches. Like
Yeah.
a lot of denominations have different ceremonies that they do, right?
Yes.
So like
Like a baptism for little kids.
yes. So let's start
babies.
there.
Yeah.
So like the Catholic Church does
Pedo,
baptism.
not the pedo baptism. They do other whatever kind of baptism they do. I can't remember.
All right. So the Catholic Church does infant baptism.
Yes, there you go.
Right.
That's-
Your Reformed churches do it. And then other church traditions do it as well.
Yeah.
And in each of those traditions, it has a little bit of a different meaning. Okay. But essentially, the big meaning is this is where parents are saying, I want my child
Yeah.
to be part of my faith.
Yeah.
Right. To different degrees, that's what it means. Now, in all of those traditions, they have something that comes later. Right, like for the Catholics, they do the catechism class. Some traditions do confirmation.
Yeah.
But the idea is later on, usually around 11, 12, somewhere in there, is this second step that builds upon the baptism. So the baptism is the parents saying, we want our child to be part of the faith. Now the later on confirmation is the child saying, this is now my faith. So essentially the baptism is a symbol, right? That the parents hope something internal will happen. It's an external sign that they desire something internal to happen. And the confirmation then is an external sign that something internal has happened.
Right.
Right. So you got two different things.
It's almost like the owning of the faith.
Right. Two different signs that have like very similar meaning. External symbol, something internal. So we don't do infant baptism here. And it's not because we hate the people who do or anything like that. It's just simply we have a different sign.
Yeah.
So when we do the parent dedication, that's an opportunity for us to let our parents say, I want my child to continue in the faith. So it's the parents making an external sign that they have a desire that something internal will happen in their kids. Now we have that secondary symbol, it's baptism. So when someone at the gathering gets baptism, that's them saying, this is my faith. And so that may happen at the age of 10, 11, 12. It may happen at the age of 30, 40, 50. But baptism, again, it's an external symbol of an internal change. So we ask parents to dedicate their children to kickstart that process because it's just a powerful reminder of, hey, I want my child to know Jesus, to love Jesus, to follow Jesus for their whole life. And so I'm starting that journey here by committing to that in front of the whole church. And then asking the church to join me in that, to partner with me, and which we do. We partner with parents in the development of their children, their spiritual development. We pray for them. All of that's a part of it. So if a parent came to me and said, should I dedicate my child? I would say yes. There's not any significant thing that happens there. It's an external symbol of an internal desire.
Yeah.
But you absolutely should do it because it's kind of like you're drawing a line in the sand, saying from this point forward, we're going to do everything we can to make sure our child knows Jesus, loves Jesus, and follows Jesus for their whole life.
Yeah. Great explanation of that. And so for someone who, doesn't have little kids or maybe never had kids, I think there's also a really powerful message in there of that, like, hey, our faith is not just about us and God. It's about us, God, and the community that we worship in.
Yes.
So it's when the children are getting baptized, or not baptized, but dedicated, that we're saying as a church, we realize that this is a community where we look out for each other. We want the best for each other. We want to help each other grow closer to God together. And there's no greater symbol of that, in my opinion, of saying, these are kids, these are important to us. We want to help them and give them the best pathway to live out their faith as they grow older.
Right.
And that's the best way to do that.
Yep. So it doesn't take a village to raise a child. It takes parents, because
Yes.
that's what God set up is,
Right.
is a parent-child relationship. However, a community of believers who come alongside parents
Yeah.
make that so much easier for them.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we want to be. We want to be that community of believers.
Yep. Okay. Well,
All right.
thanks for spending some time with us today.
So we're just cutting it off. We're
cutting it
done.
off. Oh, unless John has a question for us. No question. He wants us
He's
to be
like,
done.
he's like that.
John-
Way too long.
John just woke up because he's tired today.
All right.
So thanks for spending some time with us today. Great discussions this morning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we will see you all here on Sunday.
See you later.